saying, I'm Lindsay Jerka from the West Los Angeles Malibu chapter. And
Bill from San Diego, obviously. Haven't figured that out.
yeah, and okay. The reason that we're here today is because we have a lot of people that we're dealing with. We've got a lot of members in both of our chapters, and we kept having common problems. The executive committee was doing everything. People were coming to our events, and you know, somebody at a tabling wouldn't be sure about an issue, or you know, they would come to the chapter and they'd really want to get involved and plug themselves in, but they'd communicate to one person and that didn't get up the line. And so we were like, how can we sit down and really have an information share and empower our volunteers to make this a bigger, better.
Down in San Diego, at the same time, we are facing the same issues, just like a lot of you folks probably are. And kind of independently of each other, we started developing our own sort of core volunteer training.
No, really, we just copied San Diego.
Well, it's kind of developed into two different things. So we kind of, you know, approach it a little bit differently. It's not so structured, it's kind of set in stone. We just want to kind of give you guys an outline and take this with you and try to, you know, implement it with your chapter, make it specific, you know, for what you guys need. So.
Right, so we'll show you what works for us and talk a little bit about the differences between our two models, and then you guys can apply it to whatever will work best given your needs and focus. But what we're going to talk about today is not different from the model of how Surfrider originally started. We're very unique because we're a 100% volunteer organization. So we started with a couple of visionaries, and those are you guys. You guys are the visionaries of your own chapter. And we've got like one source of information, right? We've got Surfrider, and that's where everything is coming from. That's nationals, that's our chapter net. Okay, so we spread what we know with our friends and our families. We talk about the issues, we talk about the campaigns, we talk about solutions. Go ahead. And then we've got little chapter networks, and those chapters share, go ahead. Those chapters share with like government agencies and, you know, constituents that care about what's going on, environmental agencies, but we really want to, with schools, we really want to fill this in and empower other people to be their own sources of information and solutions. So that's what we're talking to you about today, is how do we fill that in and create a groundswell of people that are empowered to do their own thing.
Yeah, cool. And, you know, kind of some of the parallels that we're talking about, this is something that Belinda Smith, one of the executive committee members down in San Diego, kind of developed for the core volunteer training to kind of visualize, you know, how we see pulling people through Surfrider. As you can see, I'm not really a great graphic artist, but the whole slide would kind of be the general public, you know, everyone who's out there. And inside that are supporters. And you could be a supporter by saying, hey, I support what Surfrider does. I signed your online action alert. You know, maybe I sent you a $20 donation, something like that. You know, that shows some level of commitment, some level of acknowledgement, some level of, hey, I support what Surfrider does. Even if it's just kind of telling their family and friends, it's raising awareness. The next level are people who kind of take it to the next level and actually spend time to volunteer, to come out, maybe a beach cleanup, maybe a chapter meeting, you know, maybe a specific city council meeting, something like that. Or someone who says, hey, you know, I don't have time to volunteer, but I want to become a member. I want to officially be known that I'm a Surfrider supporter. So when you guys go to city council or to your governor or, you know, to DC, you know, then we can bump those numbers up. So, you know, those are really important people. You know, we don't want to discredit them. And we were kind of stuck there for a while. You know, we kind of had those people, you know, we had an executive committee. And 6 or 7 years ago, when it came time for executive committee elections, we were just looking at the chapter meeting in October and said, well, hey, how about you? Do you want to be on the executive committee? And, you know, just kind of pulling people out that way. We were lucky just to get enough candidates to help out. So that kind of, you know, made us start thinking, said, hey, you know, we got to develop something. How about, you know, some sort of, you know, core volunteer? We just kind of, you know, ran with the phrase, not really anything technical, but just kind of at the core of Surfrider. Just to give people, you know, more autonomy to feel more comfortable in helping out. And, you know, from that came the training session that we're going to, you know, touch upon and everything. And a little later on, we started, developing a great base of core volunteers, and said, wow, these guys want to help out. Let's get them in charge of a program. Maybe they could be the beach cleanup coordinator. Maybe they could help out, be the Rise Above Plastics coordinator, something along those lines. Just to give people, more authority. Being more of a leader. Take an active role in helping out. And then finally have the executive committee. Obviously that's the 5 or 7 person committee that really, votes on the important decisions, really guides the chapter. But there's a lot of people who want to be active, maybe specialize somewhere, but they don't have the time to go to all the executive committee meetings and everything. So, that's where the campaign manager, comes in. You don't have to be on the executive committee, but, it's helpful. And something that's not listed on here is our advisory committee. It'd kind of be, either on the EC or the campaign manager. Once someone leaves the executive committee for the San Diego chapter, we don't want them to leave the chapter. We still want to retain them. They have so much institutional knowledge. We want to keep them involved, so we kind of gave them the title advisory committee. And that way if they're out, talking with people, some of them, are friends with the reporters, maybe in the press, and they say, hey, I'm on the advisory committee of the Surfrider Foundation. And again, that's a nice title that, gives them a little bit of empowerment. So we definitely want to retain people. So as you can see with the area, we kind of want to pull people in from the general public. We want, essentially the general public to be supporters. We want everyone, no matter how far inland you are, to be aware of Surfrider, and that the ocean's downhill from everywhere. So, we need everyone to protect it, preaching to the choir here. That's kind of the idea, kind of pull people through the system, through that structure. And it takes a little bit of work, it takes some time to implement and everything, but, with that time and effort, it's really successful at the end.